Hi, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for liking and subscribing. And of course, in my last video I said I want to share about how trauma had affected even the way I would express myself in interviews, the way I would bring out my strengths in an interview, and even the way I would answer the questions. So, and of course I want to share this through my own story, and I want to share 3 instances that I went to, and when a time when I went for an interview and how it went. The way a long time ago we would be told, don't wear this, get there 1 hour before time, those advices. I don't know if you remember those things that were being told that time when you wanted to go for interviews. I think some of them were really crazy, but allow me to tell you. So I went to an interview in a certain bank in Kenya, and of course, first of all, because of the advice I was given, I didn't wear clothes that I was comfortable with. So I went in clothes that I've never worn before. They were loose fitting. They were not bringing out my best, in short. And I don't mean that we wear tight clothes to interviews. I just mean that they were clothes I would never wear on a normal day. And that's why it's important for people to also remember your style. I mean, when you're going for an interview, you also want people to see you for who you are, right? And style is one of the things I believe bring out who we are. So I remember going to an interview in clothes I've never worn before. Today is a bit windy, so I hope you can hear me. But anyway, I went for an interview in clothes that I've never worn before, and it was really difficult to bring out the best out of me, because when I looked at myself in the mirror, I was not really comfortable or even confident on how I was dressed. But I went anyway, because that is what the interviewers want to see, right? I went to the interview, and I don't remember much about the questions that were being asked, but I just remember going into the interview, and they were asking me questions, and I panicked. I went in with anxiety. I couldn't even answer the questions, because now I had never had any experience before. In fact, I think this interview I went in after high school. The way they tell you they don't require any kind of experience, and you go for that interview. So it was that kind of an interview, and I went in and I couldn't answer any of the questions they were asking me, and I was just looking at them. So it was like a stare game. That was the first interview I had. Like, it was really, and that is what trauma can do to you. Sometimes you've gone through a lot, that when remember the way interviews a long time ago used to be military style. They ask you grilling questions and all that. To be honest, it's my hope that a lot of employers have moved away from that kind of approach for interviews, and that now we're embracing creating an environment as well. For me, this is what I truly believe about interviews. You want to create an environment where people can express themselves in a way that they know best. And of course, you want to create an environment also where they can feel confident enough to bring out their best, because sometimes when the environment is not conducive, it's very hard to tell if the candidates really brought their best or did not. So and of course, I'm in the HR space, and what I do is I try to create an environment where people can express themselves. When they need a glass of water, when they need to catch a break, just a breath, and to continue talking, give them the space. Yeah, right? When people are running late and they call us to tell us they're running late, a long time ago the advice was that you cannot be late. You have to be there 1 hour before. And sometimes when you go there 1 hour before, and you're also a person who comes from a lot of traumatic experiences, when people are passing there, you continue to build anxiety. I don't know for how many people have gone through interviews and felt the same. So for me, when I used to go too early to an interview, people are passing, people are having conversations. So you kind of, because at that time I'd not dealt with a lot of the traumatic things I was feeling, so you kind of panic in the middle, So 1 hour before, really? I mean, it's okay if you go there and maybe you have a book you want to catch up on, there's something, it's fine, really. But it was unnecessary, if you ask me, right? So, and I remember the second interview I went to was, they gave me a psychometric test. And I remember we sat in a classroom kind of room, and there was all of us were in one room, like every person who had come for an interview, and we were many of us. I think that was like the first stage of getting rid of people. And of course, I remember we were told to go into a certain room. We were told to leave our bags outside. We were told to go and to sit. Now the chairs were almost like 2 meters away from each other. It was a big room. And I remember I looked at that question, and at the questions, and I was like, I even have no idea. I even have no idea what I'm doing, and of course at that time is when your triggers come to life. You feel anxious, you feel all these kinds of things. It was a military kind of approach, if you ask me. It felt like an exam, and then there was like a person going around, just looking at us while we were answering questions. The way, if you've done exams in Kenya, that is how what happened. So it was kind of like an exam setup. And I remember I it was quite an experience. And I remember I just went through the questions, answered what I could answer, and I handed over my paper and I went away. Of course, I was never called back. And a long time ago, you're not even being told, like, you know, we've already conducted, and we didn't use. I mean, you're not receiving any regrets. Yeah, I really appreciate the fact that right now, when I go to different places for interviews, or when I interview, it's a bit different. If you ask me, the approach is a bit different. And I also remember the third experience. I went to an interview, and then when I got into the room, there were 5 people, you know, and it was an internship role. There were 5 people to interview me, and I remember going into the room and I panicked. You know, when I saw 4 women and 1 man, I kind of felt wow. But I walked in anyway. But I panicked. I remember trying to move the chair because I was supposed to sit. It was in a boardroom. I was supposed to sit in the chair. Tried to move the chair. The chair became so heavy I couldn't even lift it or even push it. So I just decided to slide in and sit on the chair. And then the chair, you know, turned me literally to look at the other side. And I had to, you know, all the way turn back and come back. And I'm like, okay, good morning, you know. And of course, my voice was shaking and all that. Although that I ended up getting that job. However, I really, really struggled. And that is, I don't know how the experiences for other people has been, but for me, I think the one thing I want to say is that I hope that for many employers, they've gotten to a place where they've changed the way we approach interviews, because we don't know the people's backgrounds. And just because people have come from a traumatic place doesn't mean they can't do the job. However, they just have some triggers in between. For me, I'm actually looking at a world where all of us can become trauma aware. We can, you know, teach ourselves something about trauma and how it affects people, so that we can create an environment where everyone can thrive, right? And I can only imagine, even our own kids go through the same things. They were traumatized, you know, when they were kids. So how do we create an environment where they can fully bring themselves, you know, their feelings out? Yeah. And apart from, of course, I don't expect people to bring their feelings out in an interview, but can we create an environment where people can bring out their best without them feeling like they're disadvantaged because they're feeling insecure, because they're feeling not confident, because they're feeling, you know, you can create an environment as an employer that will allow other people also to come in and bring their best, you know, still, because all of us have come from a background that we don't have any control over. But how can we create a workforce, an environment, a working environment that is trauma aware, so that we can come to a place where we start having those conversations and we start understanding when people are being triggered. We even notice their body language, and we create an environment where, like, you know, do you need a minute? Can we give you 1 minute? Can we excuse you for 1 minute? Do you need a glass of water? I mean, it's fine, right? So yeah. And also, just to get to a place where we don't use that military kind of approach when we're doing interviews. We're asking, tell us about your weakness. Even the tone of voice, the body language is like it's like you literally want this person to fail. You know, we must be enablers. For me, I believe interviewers are supposed to be enablers that bring the best out of. We want to see your best side, even as you tell us your truth. We want to be ourselves so much authentic in our interviews, so that people can come and bring out the best. And that is the best way for us to see, is this person the right fit for this role? And are they, because again, if we hire a person who's not the right fit for the role, we're also setting them up for failure. We have so many people who go for interviews because they're just looking for a job. And it's okay. However, you need to also ask yourself, is this really what you want to do? When we're talking about purpose, when we're talking about alignment, we want to look at, is this really what you want to do? Do you see yourself giving value? Because many of us, when we start working and then we realize we're not giving value, that is when we give up. And that is when we disconnect from the job, we disconnect from the working, you know, space, and then we don't give our best. And when we don't grow, guess what we're doing? We're dying. So that is what I wanted to share today. I hope you've learned something. Trauma truly, truly affects every area of your life, and I'll continue sharing more and more on these areas. I'll continue sharing even how do you bring out your CV, because if you've been affected by trauma, sometimes, I mean, many of us pay to have our CVs done for us. However, we go to interviews and we're not even able to articulate our CVs to the interviewers, and it's hard. Because when interviewers see there's a disconnection between you and they know that we pay to have our CVs made, but if you cannot own your CV, if you cannot get to a place where you own, because you feel you're not good enough, you send, experts who make your CVs and they, you know, bring out the best out of you, but you cannot articulate that into words. So we'll talk about how then do you earn, how then do you own your CV, how then do you get to a place where you deal with your trauma so that you can come into an interview and own everything that you know. We have even some of us who go through that process where you feel you're not good enough. So now, if you feel not good enough, how are you going to bring your best in an interview? Yeah, because you're going to meet different people in interviews. How then do you bring your best? Let's have this conversation in my next video. So thank you and bye.